Hello everyone, as always, I'm Vlad Sparastoria. I shoot and I know things about shooting. Today I have a very interesting story because I don't want to talk so much about a gun, but rather about the story behind a specific gun. Because we've already talked about the Walther P38 in the past. We've examined it thoroughly, and today I don't want to make another video about the Walther P38. No, this P38 is a very special P38 and also highly sought after by collectors of these weapons. This P38 is known, for example, in America as the Grey Ghost. It's simply one of the pistols that was produced while Mauser was under French occupation. On April 20th, 1945, French troops, specifically the 4th Division, the Moroccan Mountain Division, arrived at Oberndorf am Neckar, where they found the Mauser factory completely deserted. The factory is almost deserted. Inside, there are only 3 functional firearms, 3 sporting carbines. The rest of the weapons, all those that had been there in the previous days, had been handed over to the Volkssturm, the Nazi Party's people's militia, which, in Hitler's and the party's view, was supposed to defend Germany to the last man with all means available. 3 rifles isn't much, but they also find a huge amount of unassembled material. Lots of parts for weapons, some more finished, some less. It is estimated that there were a total of 120,000 firearms of all kinds in various stages of completion. In May 1945, the French command ordered the assembly and finishing of these firearms. Why did they do that? Well, the French were obviously occupied by Germany during World War II, let's remember, in 1940. And at that moment, they found themselves in the difficult position of having to rebuild and re-establish their own state. Obviously, France had a war within the war, since part of France and part of the troops were Vichy France, a puppet state of Germany. Other troops, like those of General de Gaulle, would fight alongside the Allies. France also had geopolitical interests that were different from those of Great Britain and the United States, and at that time it still had a large colonial empire that it wanted to reclaim. Many of these areas had been controlled, for example, by the Japanese in Indochina. In short, it really needed weapons and still didn't have an arms industry worthy of the name. So between 1945 and 1946, Mauser, under French control, would assemble a large number of firearms. In 1947, this production would stop because one of the points, let's say, of the peace agreement with the Soviets was that all German industries had to be dismantled. In 1947, the French would move the remaining German machinery to France and demolish the Mauser buildings. We also have quite a few photos of this demolition of all the Mauser buildings. However, this large-scale production of German weapons, so-called French, would remain in France. And many of these weapons would end up with their troops, especially in the conflict that was brewing, that was taking shape in Indochina, the one that would later become the First Vietnam War, the rebellion against France. Shall we take a closer look at this beautiful P38, French, German under French occupation? I don't know. How do we first recognize that it's one of these pistols? The first clue should be the fact that it has the code SWW45. SW is a code adopted by Mauser under French occupation. 45 indicates the year. There are only 2 years of production, 45 and 46. The other feature that can further confirm that it actually belongs to this batch is the serial number. Because if we check, by the way, this is another fantastic book by Alexander Kruzek about the P38, the Bible of the P38. We notice that the serial numbers, the number present on the pistol, matches the range, the various serial numbers that characterize this production under French occupation. In the collecting world, these P38S are known as Grey Ghosts, a rather peculiar name to describe a pistol. It has all the features of the late production P38, Many things, many small details have been simplified. Also, why gray ghost? Why gray? Because it is entirely finished with this phosphate coating. The first P38S, the ones that were a bit nicer, a bit better made, were typically blued. Phosphating, on the other hand, is a finish that might be a bit ugly. It's matte, not nice or shiny. It doesn't highlight the beauty of the machining work, but it costs less and can be done much more quickly. Of course, in areas where, for example, the barrel rubs, as you can see, it's a finish that comes off maybe a bit sooner than certain bluing treatments. Even so, it does its job perfectly, so there's absolutely nothing to worry about. For the rest, mechanically speaking, it's just a regular P38. It's interesting precisely because it has so much history. Another typical feature of these late production French P38S, we could say, is one, the sheet metal grip panel. Initially, the P38S had bakelite grip panels. However, bakelite was another very valuable material for the German war effort, and they were replaced by these sheet metal grip panels, much less elegant and less attractive than the bakelite ones. Another characteristic that shows this was French-made is this little star that was applied to weapons produced in 45 and 46 by the French occupation authorities. This story I've told you is a very interesting chapter, a chapter that's a bit about weapons-related desperation, so to speak, having to use the weapons of their enemy to their own advantage. It's a very interesting chapter in arms history that connects directly with the turbulent history of France in the immediate post-war period. Post-war France was destroyed by the conflict, a France divided by the conflict, a France desperately trying to rebuild its old empire, an old empire that, as we well know, would not last anywhere in the world. That's all from me for today, and as always, I'll see you next time.